Well, we're to February the 4th, and kind of do another update on the overall situation here. Things were happening. I guess the big Republican debate in the House over Representative Greene and Liz Cheney's position on the leadership was resolved with basically the Republicans decided to not go after either one of them. Liz Cheney won her vote, got one and won it, and so did, and I guess the Republicans aren't going to throw Representative Greene overboard, so they're going to leave it to the Democrats if they want to do that. At any rate, again, I want to emphasize up front, if you like these videos, remember to subscribe, because more subscriptions, the more people get to see them, and the more likely it gets promoted to other people. I am not one of these monetized people here, and probably don't really desire to be, considering that then I would just be demonetized once they understood what I was saying, probably. And it goes forward to friends and so forth. Okay, let's get on with it. Yeah, and I actually think in a way, given everything, it's probably a good choice. I think Liz Cheney has a real problem, and that is her reelection in 2022 in the primary. I mean, she's just not from the right state to take that position, in my opinion. So that's kind of my view on it. And for the moment, I think the idea of Republicans throwing each other overboard is a bad idea. We need numbers, and so I think that's a good idea. We'll see what the House does. I believe, if I understand, the House rules are it takes a 2/3 vote to actually expel somebody, but you can kick them off the committee with a simple majority vote. I think this has never been done before, of having the whole body vote to kick somebody of one party off their committee. In other words, usually each party controls the people in their own committees that they put forward. And here we have a situation where the Democrats are trying to say which Republican can be the Republican on the committee. And that sets up a bad precedent, particularly if the Republicans were to regain the House in 2022, which is not out of sight. If that were to happen, then we could start kicking people off like AOC or some of those other provocative people off the Democrat committees. So I think they ought to really think this over before they do it. I mean, from their own point of view, I would think not doing it would be the best thing to do, because if she really is such a big embarrassment to the Republicans, as they claim, why are they trying to help the Republicans out? Seems kind of counterproductive to me. At any rate, so we'll see how that turns out today. I don't know yet. The basic situation on other issues, I guess the reconciliation bill was passed in the House for the big $1.9 trillion supposed COVID relief bill, but I think this is a lot more than COVID relief, and besides, we already have $900 billion that hasn't hardly been spent yet. There are obviously some other things that could be done to protect jobs and to protect small businesses, and perhaps to facilitate the distribution of the vaccines, of course. But I think there's a lot of other things in there that are really questionable. And we'll see how Joe Manchin holds up in his positions he's taken. The interesting thing about it is, that if the Republicans stay together on this, one Democrat could actually sink the whole deal. And it occurs to me that some of these Democrats, particularly somebody like Senator Tester, who should have an interest in this pipeline that was canceled, could basically say, hey, President Biden, reverse yourself on that pipeline ban, or I'm going to vote against this bill. But on the other hand, if you do reverse that position, then I'll vote for the bill, whatever's in it. So that would be a kind of a position he could take that would leverage a situation. He's not up for re-election for 4 years, so it isn't like he has to worry about the 2022 election. And who knows what the political dynamic will be in 2024, and whether or not. I mean, it certainly probably wouldn't hurt his position in Montana. So just a thought. But I don't know if very few of these Democrats seem to have that much independence anymore. It looks like, that for the moment Manchin may have, and considering the Democrat agenda is kind of an anti-West Virginia agenda, and they ticked him off by sending Kamala Harris into his state to speak against the policies he has. That may not bode well. I mean, that was a whole suggestion that laid off coal miners could get jobs clearing landmines doesn't sound like a very attractive thing. And even if we take a more favorable that she really was referring to restoration of presumably strip mining sites, I'm not sure whether strip mining is a big factor in West Virginia or is that more out west. But at any rate, that's one of the issues that came up. And the other issue is that the putting increasing the minimum wage in the bill, at least Manchin says, violates the reconciliation so-called Byrd rules, which if he sticks with that on a point of order and the Republicans stay with their side, then basically he can probably kill that part of the bill. So, and of course that'll really tick off so many of the progressives, which would be a really nice situation. The other interesting situation is he's actually the chairman of the Committee on Certain Energy Issues, as I understand it, and we just got the formalization of the power sharing agreement yesterday, and that is that equal representation on all committees, and basically bills that tie go to the floor for a vote, which puts the Republicans in a pretty attractive situation given the defeats we've suffered. I mean, it could be a lot worse. And that's why don't bemoan one rhino or the other, because each of those rhinos are critical to having that situation, by the way. And I would suggest that rhinos are better than Democrats almost all the time anyhow. I prefer solid conservatives myself, but again, it depends on the state. Alaska, I don't know why we're stuck with somebody like Murkowski there. But on the other hand, well, I do know historically, but I mean, it is kind of ironic. Whereas on the other hand, the Democrats could bemoan the fact that they were unable to replace Collins, who actually did vote for Trump's Kavanaugh appointment that they were so much against, and yet they were unable to remove her in Maine. So, but that's one of the fates of politics, right? But anyhow, we need all the numbers we can and try to hold together here and see what we can chip away at. And I think that it sounds like Manchin might have some other objections as well as the Byrd rule violation that's in the House version. So that's kind of where we're sitting at the moment. And I guess this is going to be a long slog. Obviously, we have a lot of executive orders now. On the positive side, I think that something that pretty good has come out of Florida that Governor DeSantis has come up with, and I'm hoping to see other states, particularly I'm thinking maybe Texas or Missouri or other states go the same way. And on the big tech, you have the Section 230, which is has been a big factor. And I think that this actually has a lot of merit, what he's doing. He's basically saying, okay, 230 protects him from lawsuits like liability issues. Okay, so if the original purpose was something along the lines of, okay, somebody gets on Twitter and says some defamatory thing on Twitter, the person might want to sue the person that made that comment. But since Twitter would be big pockets compared to some ordinary citizen, you'd also want to sue Twitter too for posting it. And therefore, they could hopefully recover large money damages. Well, so Section 230 protects them from that. And apparently it's been interpreted, maybe correctly, I'd have to study this some more, and I think I will going forward. It seems to also protect the person that having their account deleted just because they said something Twitter doesn't like, or maybe some people on Twitter don't like. But here's what's the genius of the Florida position. It's getting into the question of what if you suspend a political candidate's account? Okay, that would presumably be during an election cycle. That is campaign interference. It's not about liability. It's about the idea that you're actually favoring one candidate over another. It's a de facto political contribution of unknown value, but if candidate A and candidate B are running against each other and you don't like what A says and Twitter deletes A's account, then candidate B gets an advantage that he can attack candidate A, and that candidate A can't respond. See? So that's an in-kind contribution. And I think that is a much more debatable thing, whether the federal law supersedes that sort of a lawsuit or ban, right? In this case, includes some kind of $100,000 a day penalty and stuff like that, which presumably then gets litigated into the court system and gets you potentially standing to only go to the Supreme Court, or maybe even to a lower appellate court, depending on which court you end up in. I mean, some courts are going to be one way and some are going to be the other, and it also depends a little bit on which three-judge panel you end up getting hit with, too. That's it's kind of a game of chance there, but I do think that if enough states pass laws of this sort, they're going to eventually get to the Supreme Court, and there's a chance to whittle away at the big tech's power. And they might even go a little overboard if they ever take the case. You know, it's one of those kind of situations where you've got to get into court first. I mean, that was the problem, for instance, President Trump had during the challenges, is he never could get a case really into court until it was too late. But let's don't go through that again. But the point is, but he basically got dismissed in the lower courts, and, well, we know the whole story. Well, this is a whole new issue, totally unrelated to that directly. And I think it has some potential, and I'm kind of hoping other states follow suit and file similar laws. It falls into the general category, what I was talking in earlier videos, of the idea of hitting it with multiple lawsuits in multiple jurisdictions over multiple issues, with multiple different kinds of attempted creative litigation. If nothing else, it'll keep them spending money and time fighting all these things, batting the flies away, which is always fun. And then second of all, it could have the effect that one or more of them could get to the Supreme Court and might get to a favorable ruling. Because I think it would be a lot less of a stretch to say that the First Amendment would apply to these kind of issues than it would be to say some of the other court decisions that have been so famous in recent decades, which about a variety of social issues, which again, we don't need to digress into we know what I think they are. And I'm saying some of those were done basically on the preference of people, I think, rather than a true textual constitutional basis. And the thing I'm thinking is that, for instance, if you're working for a company and you use a company platform to make your own personal political statement, I think the company obviously has a right to censor or fire you for doing that, because it's their situation. But essentially, I think that Twitter and Facebook and etc. have set themselves up as such large public squares and are being used so much for public discourse of various sorts that I think the First Amendment should sort of apply in a way. And I think that, here's the thing, I don't think literally getting rid of all of Section 230 is necessarily a good idea either. That could effectively destroy these platforms completely, and I'm not sure that's what our objective is. But because then they would get hit with lawsuits over defamation. But it'd be a whole other issue that since they do have protection against defamation, they really don't have to have the ability to protect themselves, don't have to have the need to protect themselves against what the users say, because they're already protected against defamation. So if you say something absolutely outrageous that causes damages to other people, then they could come and sue you for saying it, not Twitter or Facebook for letting it be posted. And the other thing would be to try to create a situation where they actually would be forced to have a more objective implementation of their guidelines. I did slip out and mention Parler, and I guess the reason why that came up is that was it John Massey, I think his name is, who was the CEO of Twitter, has been fired by their board of directors in a mysterious move, which I don't know. We have no more details to why he was fired, whether that's because they blame him for getting the sites shut down by not handling himself well enough, or was it some other conflict? We have got no details on why he's gone, but I guess he's gone. And I guess the question is, who's going to take his place, given that the thing is offline and has had no real, effectiveness in getting back online, really. So we'll have to see. Again, that's another thing to watch for and to see how things play out. And of course, we're now lining up for the big Trump impeachment, which is coming up next Tuesday, I guess. And we'll see how that goes. It seems like it's almost clear that Trump will be acquitted of the impeachment charge, but it's unclear, how the argument will go. To me, it could give certain Republicans, such as Rand Paul and other people, Ted Cruz and several others, a floor to really lay into the Democrats and kind of show the absolute hypocrisy of what they're doing. And the Democrats pretty much are, kind of going to be repeating the same charge that this was some kind of a Trump-inspired insurrection. And well, anyway, that'll be coming up the next week. And it'll be kind of good to get that over with, I think, because I've noticed that the news cycles on things like some home pages, on the MSN homepage, so many of their news stories are things they're like 3 weeks old. They're running out of news. They don't have Trump to kick around as much, and he's been incredibly quiet, which still probably at this point a good idea to stay quiet after the impeachment hearing. Why he's really remaining so quiet is unclear. Obviously, he doesn't have a Twitter account, but I'm sure he could find some other mechanism to get attention if he wanted to. So apparently, he's decided that that's probably the best thing for the moment. Well, anyway, I'll close this for now, and I appreciate everybody that's been watching these things and forward them, and I'll try to get relevant content for you. And again, go ahead and give me a like and if you like it, and also comments. I'm interested to hear what people think about what I've had to say. Thank you.